Hello, and welcome to Maybe I Can, exploring possibilities one sprinkle at a time. If you've ever found yourself asking, is this all there is to life? Then you're in the right place. I'm Debbie, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and coach. And every Tuesday, I'm here to share a sprinkle of hope and inspiration. Together, we'll uncover the more joy, more fulfillment, more prosperity, more fun. We'll share stories of transformation, actionable tips, and that little nudge you need to take the next step. So let's embark on this journey of discovery and say, maybe I can, to a life filled with more. Ready to find out? Let's get started. The Maybe I Can show starts now. The show, I'm your host, Debbie Weiss, and welcome to November, the month of gratitude. And so before we jump into today's show and month-long topic that is near and dear to my heart and to my guest's heart as well, I have to just do a little plug because I am very excited that on 11/11, a specifically chosen day by me, because it's a lucky day, my second book launches. And here it is for those of you who are actually on video. It's called The Sprinkle Effect, A Guide to Living a More Colorful and Fulfilling Life. And you can find it on pre-order now, and the links are in the show notes. And I'll talk about that more later in the month. I don't want to take anything away from today's topic and from my guest. So besides November being a month of gratitude, November is also National Family Caregivers Month. And as I said, it's a topic near and dear to my heart. And I want to start with a very famous quote known to us family caregivers by Rosalind Carter, who said there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need a caregiver. And today, I feel like, to me, in my online world, that this is a caregiver whose reputation preceded her. I heard so many things about her before I was lucky enough to meet her maybe a year or so ago, when I was fortunate enough to be a guest on her podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest, Elizabeth Miller. Elizabeth is a family caregiver advocate, speaker, author, certified caregiving consultant, and certified senior advisor. Elizabeth's experiences caring for aging parents with chronic and terminal illnesses and for a sibling with developmental disabilities inspired her to create Happy Healthy Caregiver, LLC, in 2015. Through her coaching services, speaking, award-winning podcast, book, and online community, Elizabeth helps family caregivers infuse caregiving and self-care with their busy lives. She hosts the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network, wrote the Just For You, a daily self-care journal, and facilitates support groups for family caregivers. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your new book coming out this month.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's start with my signature question, which is, can you tell me about a time where you went from a defeated I can't attitude to an empowered maybe I can attitude?
Yeah, I love this question, Debbie, because we do get in our heads a lot, right? And we think that mindset is everything. I would say this business that I started, Happy Healthy Caregiver, I was like, maybe I can do this because, I had a great job. I worked as a professional in IT. I was well paid. I had fabulous benefits, but I was really struggling with needing more flexibility to care for my family members. And so had this, niggling idea that was like, this is important. People need support. family caregivers are drowning. I'm drowning. And really found that it was helping me as much as it was helping other people in this space. And so, I think the IT background helped me in some ways, in that, we are constantly testing and learning to see if things are going to work. And that's kind of, what got me this far. I'm looking at almost 10 years in February, and pinching myself that I made it. I think that's, a big test. But there's been a lot of times in this business where I felt like this is hard. I've thought about flipping the table a million times, and like just going back and phoning it in and for a job for somebody else. But just this constant feeling of like, this is important, and maybe it is me. Maybe it's me that does this.
You know, back then too, boy, 2015 doesn't feel like back then, but like you said, it's almost 10 years
10
ago. Who
years.
can believe that? Were there even other people doing this kind of work?
Well, there were, but I didn't know about them. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
even know what to Google. Like, I didn't know what terms to put in the search to see what was out there. I didn't call myself a family caregiver. In fact, my first business name, I really identified with the sandwich generation term. And so I called my business Savvy Sandwicher, which is going to like figure out how to navigate the world of being a sandwich generation caregiver. But people thought I made sandwiches. So that wasn't very, it got to be. So learning later that caregiving is what it is, and adopting and owning that role. There are a lot of other names for what we do out there that maybe I like a little better, but it's already hard enough to find the resources for family caregivers. So Happy Healthy Caregiver made sense as a new brand name, because that's what I want. That's how I wanted for me, and that's what I want for, other family caregivers in this space. Like, it's hard enough to care for people, but we deserve to live happy, healthy lives as well. And I know you're about sprinkling all the joy and the fun, so we certainly align on many of our missions.
Absolutely. And yeah, actually, that's how I found you. I didn't even know that I was the same way. When I found out there was a name for what I had been doing for my whole entire life, I was shocked. So I never even thought about looking for support or community.
Hmm.
I only thought to look for support maybe in, whatever my loved one was suffering from, right? With like support groups for cancer or stroke victims, or whatever that is,
Sure.
dementia, but never just specifically to support me as a family caregiver.
Yeah.
um
I mean, you've
so
lived it, Debbie. Like, like when they get a diagnosis, we get a diagnosis too. Like,
yes,
our health and happiness is completely at risk when a person we care about gets their diagnosis. And so those all those support groups and those communities and those educational resources are great. But what I was frustrated with is like people were shooting on me and saying, you should be doing this, that, and the other for your loved one. But really, I was invisible to the people, and likely you were too. And it's like we're continuing to sink and drown. And it's mystifying to me that like here we are, almost 10 years after that starting this, and people still don't really know in a lot of ways that they're caregivers. And there's 53 million plus in just the US alone. Like, why are we hiding this from them? I don't get it.
totally agree, totally agree. So let's go back and talk a little bit about your own caregiving journey. How did it start? um did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into in the beginning?
So some people have like that date, right? That diagnosis date of when they became a caregiver. I didn't really have that. I saw this mudslide coming. Like my parents' health were failing. It was like one thing after another, and then the one things after another started coming closer and closer together. And we tried to get in front of it. We tried to have conversations with them. They were retired. They live 6 hours away from family. And I'm one of six kids, although I've got a brother who also needs care. He's was born with an intellectual and developmental disability. So my folks were caring for him as well. And it was like we could kind of see the train wreck coming, but we didn't really know how to get in front of it. And frankly, like we tried, I think. We tried to have some of those courageous conversations, but they were like, nope, we're doing this, and you all are our kids, and you're going to support us. And then kind of the worst case scenario happened where my dad was the stronger and the healthier of the two, which wasn't quite saying a lot, really, in caring for my brother too. And then he got he got sick quickly, had sepsis, and within a month was intubated 4 times on hospice, passed away. And then it was like, oh my gosh, we are in the worst case scenario of these two people living, so far away from family who cannot care for themselves at all. What are we going to do? And then figuring out the financial part of it was a little worse off than we thought. And a lot of things were worse off than we thought. And I look back at that time and I'm like, I don't even know how we did it, but we did it with like grit and perseverance, particularly like my sisters and when one of my brothers, like we were just like all in on figuring it out. And then hoping that, we can make it easier for other people in that journey. But moving then mom back to Atlanta area, which is where I live. I have 2 other brothers that lived in this area. It made sense. My folks used to live in this area. We brought my brother back. My brother lived with my brother. My mom her care needs were so vast that she needed assisted living community support. And so then I became her primary caregiver from there. And we did that for a while until that didn't work. And then I became a support caregiver when she moved in with my sister, who could care for her full time up in their summer home in Michigan.
How it sounds like you and your siblings were on the same page. Is that true? I mean, so often, you hear that that's what tear families apart and make it difficult.
Yeah, I'm lucky for sure. Like it was ingrained in us growing up. My dad used to say, blood is thicker than water. No one's going to love you like your family. Like those that plays in my head often. I'm not saying we didn't have like some headbutting,
Of
and we
course.
certainly all have different opinions. But we, particularly the sisters. There's 3 girls, 3 boys. The sisters kind of united, and we all have different strengths. And we have tag teamed and had bigger roles at different times. I have a brother that I call consistent. My one brother is really no help at all, but like he's consistent in that our whole lives he's not really been the one to kind of show up. So why would caregiving make that any different? Um, and fine, I have a cordial relationship with him. I kind of came to this point of like accepting like this is who he is. He's not going to change. And then I've got one brother that like he's great, but you've got to be really specific about the kind of help that you need. And he needs like the task list. He's not going to kind of see it on his own.
And now, do you all join together to take care of your brother that needs some assistance?
Yeah, it's still mainly on the 3 sisters and my one brother. It's harder in some ways. Like it's not as clear as caring for an older adult, which we already thought that was murky enough, right? But like
Yeah.
he's 61 years old. He was, born in an area where they didn't have all the testing and the things that they had today. My parents had 6 kids. They did what they could, but like he's, got different behavioral issues, social issues, and yeah, so we're kind of going through this process of like figuring out. He kind of got backburnered, if I'm being honest, like while we were
Yeah.
intensively caring for my mom who passed in 2020. Um, but even when those last few years she was alive, like she was detached from like what was going on in life. And so we had to kind of lean in then. Um, it's definitely affected our relationship with my brother. Like he does not want to take any kind of advice and support from his siblings. So that's kind of cantankerous and yucky, but I say we're figuring it out. What's currently working is he's a snowbird. He lives half the year in Michigan with my sister. And then driving, he's high functioning. He does drive, but he does not work. And that would kind of get us in trouble with the roads in that situation. And we thought, well, let's move him to Atlanta in the winter months. And that kind of removes those high risk things. And so he lives with my brother in the winter. And my role is really like, I take him to the doctor's appointments. I get him socially acclimated, all of that stuff. So it's not perfect, but it's what we got right now.
It's what you got. And for the most part, at least you're a cohesive team.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And I think we also like are very conscious of the fact that we can't just talk about caregiving all the time. Like we have
Yeah.
to really honor our relationships with each other. And so one of the things like with my sisters that we do every year is we have an annual sisters weekend that I think I've been doing for 20 plus years because we're kind of spread out. And they're my BFFs. So like to treasure that relationship and not be like, okay, this is all work.
Yeah. That's so nice. I love that relationship. I don't have any sisters. I have one brother who I'm very, very close to, but it's not the same as a sister. But I'm lucky to have cousins, female cousins that are, as close to sisters as you can get without being real sisters. And
Yeah, we got to figure out our care team. Like, what if we don't have it like biologically in our family? We've got to like find it in other places with friends and neighbors and professional help and things like that to put it together, because this is not a solo job. So
oh,
we need a lot of support, and that will give us more peace of mind.
absolutely. So was there a point where you noticed that caregiving was affecting your own
Oh,
mental and physical well-being?
oh yeah. Like, I mean, you look in the mirror and I was kind of like, I'm, naturally in my DNA, like a glass half full kind of person. And that felt like that was the light was kind of diminishing of that. I also like had physical things, like I full face of acne. I was, gaining weight. I have generalized anxiety and hypothyroidism. So those definitely probably weren't helping my situation. So it's, there was some, but there was like an aha moment that like if I had a lot of drives back and forth from Georgia to Florida, like during these last, the years, even up to when my dad passed away. And it was like, clicked for me that like if I did not fix this and be intentional about figuring it out, I was potentially going to put my own kids in the same situation. And I was like, we are not doing that. So we're gonna, my husband and I were really intentional about like this has got to change. We cannot keep doing this. And so that made us be focused on like, okay, how do we put some attention back on our family, back on our health, back on our happiness? And, not easy, but well worth it.
Did you feel, as many of us caregivers do, that if you turn your attention to yourselves and prioritize your own self-care, did you have that guilt feeling?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's nothing, I think guilt is kind of a natural feeling. It gets a bad rap in some ways, but really what it is like it's telling us that we want to be these things for all of these people. And we hear a lot about putting the oxygen mask on ourselves before helping others. That analogy is okay for me, but what really resonated with me was like there's nothing going to come from the sky and say, Elizabeth, now you need to take care of yourself. So it was like, this is my life. I'm on this hamster wheel treadmill. And what am I going to do about it? And so what really resonated for me was like thinking about my life as feeding a nest of hungry birds and me being this mother robin, and like my job, my kids, my pets, my home, my relationships, my husband, my care recipient, all like needing things from me. And realizing that I wasn't going to be any good to any of these people and continue to show up for them if I didn't like take some of this nourishment myself. And so when that guilt would creep up, I would be like, okay, you need some nourishment, you need some peace of mind, you need some energy, you need some joy in your life. Uh, and this is, treat this just like a wellness appointment like you do for everybody else. It's
And did
easier
you
said than
have any,
done.
yeah, did you have any main go-tos? I mean, I know now, I
Yeah.
know you have a laundry list, but was there anything, any area in your life that you particularly started with?
Starting for me was journaling. So I know writing is big for you, but like
Yep.
I studied broadcast journalism and really never used it professionally. But going back to writing and processing that, and that's, initially the groundwork for what I have now is blogging was kind of the start of it all. But I found that to be very therapeutic. And so I scheduled time on my calendar on Wednesdays and Friday mornings before anybody would miss me. At the crack of dawn, I would get up and I would go to Starbucks and I would get my thing, and have my little friends that were also hanging out there, and I would write, and sometimes I would weep while I was
Yeah.
writing. And I would go shower at the gym membership that I had. So sometimes I worked out, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I just showered and went to work. And that really was like my happy, healthy time that I thought like this is for me. I think that was a big one. I also have had a long-standing book club, and I know like we think caregiver support group, but like they were a huge support for me. And sometimes I didn't read the book, but I still, again, could have the opportunity to kind of share with, people who really understood it. And then listening to the books too. Like I didn't necessarily read them, but I would listen to them. So, and getting outside, like I've realized very quickly as I was trying on things and noticing how they made me feel that I was energized by getting outdoors. And I still am energized by getting outdoors. Like that's something I don't do as much journaling as I used to, but I'm definitely outside every day.
And I love what you just said because you were trying things on,
Yeah, like we
which
try
in
on
itself
clothes.
is almost like care, that's self-care. It's so exciting when you try something new, right? Whether it works or
Yeah.
not, at least you're trying.
Yeah, I think, because what's going to work for people listening, yourself, me, like it's all going to be different. And it got to be almost like a little game of, putting things out on Instagram and be like, I tried this today or tried that. And it could be like, aromatherapy or different types of meditation or different types of workout or um, figuring out what my signature color was. Like, all of these things, like I was just really curious, and I would invite people to be really curious about what's going to feel peace of mind, energy, or pure joy for them.
I'm going to butcher this because I don't remember what it's called or exactly what it is, but don't you do something annually where you like make
Yeah.
like a 50 a joy
Yeah.
list, or what is it again? You know
So
what
I
I'm
have,
talking about,
yeah, I
right?
have a 20 for 2025 will be kicking off soon.
Okay.
And basically, like, I just think we need more joy in our life, right? Like, we're doing a lot of hard work. And so these are not lose weight resolutions. These are like the things that you remember or that you want to try that are going to bring you joy in your life, and writing them down that like the year's not going to be complete without these things, or this is kind of your law of attraction type of stuff. And it could be little things like I love to try a new hiking trail, I love to listen to live music, I love to try new restaurants, I want to we just got e-bikes, I want to go use those more, or I want to get a massage, or whatever it is that's going to bring me joy. Add that to your list. And then my daughter, I started doing it myself, but then I invited my family to do it. And it's really become a tradition for us where on New Year's Eve day, we like sit down with colored pens and we talk about our lists and we get ideas from each other. And we don't necessarily get them all done, but I know that we get more done than if we didn't write them down at all. So yeah, I don't have it available to share yet, but I will certainly be on the lookout for those that are following me on your 20 for 25 worksheet. And I love that my friends' kids are now doing it. Like it's kind of like taking off, like less about resolutions. Let's thrive in 2025. Like that's kind of what I want to put our attention on.
I so love that because obviously, like I said, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember thinking this is a great idea. And I love the idea that you do it on New Year's instead of a resolution. Not that you can't do that too and have goals and
Yeah,
all of that, but a goal of creating more joy in your life. There's nothing better, whether you're a caregiver or not.
that's right.
So what would your advice be to a caregiver who just feels alone and drowning?
Yeah, like admit that you're alone and drowning, and then figure out that you have the power to be intentional about figuring out how to make changes with that. And so seeking your community, scheduling time for yourself, get support group or some kind of support group, whether it's a knitting club, a biking club, hike, whatever, before you think you need it, because the best advice comes from other family caregivers that they can like save you so much time and energy by pulling up and just, surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up.
And just know that you're not alone. We've all been there, and there's so many of us. And I'm going to talk about something else that I'm guessing that you still do, and I don't know how often it is. So correct me. Is it something once a month? Because when I first was introduced to you, I hopped on some kind of like lunch hour thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like a
Yes, I
kind of,
used to. I
you don't
used to
do
do
it
the
anymore?
virtual.
Oops.
I don't the virtual cafes. No, I am still a daughterhood leader. So daughterhood.org, you can go on and we are doing some fun. Like we're doing a self-care bingo event at the end of November, so people can join in on that. I just been at capacity, so I had to kind of figure out which things, but I miss it and I love doing it. But the daughterhood is daughterhood.org is a great one, and then I work and spend some time locally here in Atlanta, like connecting caregivers to resources is the other nonprofit that I work with.
And I mean, well, you'll give your information in a few minutes, but you also send a wonderful weekly email that has so many different resources for caregivers,
Yep,
and so many interesting ideas and products that are out there that can make our lives easier,
that's right.
right?
Yeah, bit.ly/HHCE news, little e, capital N news. You can subscribe. It's free. And yeah, I try to say happy, healthy caregiver related stuff every week.
And your podcast,
Yeah.
because your podcast is a mix of guests and solos, and right?
Yes, more guests because I just have a lot of interest in folks that I want to spotlight. But yeah, you have to be a real caregiver. You have to be in the trenches, either currently or in the past, to be on the show. So I love to spotlight caregivers. Caregivers are the experts in caregiving.
Absolutely. And I can tell everyone that there is no one more generous than Elizabeth. She does it only because she cares. She knows what it's like. And that's who I think we all want to talk to, someone who gets it, someone who can understand how we're feeling,
Thank
right?
you.
Because there are universal, it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, there might be differences. Fortunately, I don't have any experience dealing with dementia. And maybe someone else doesn't know what it's like to deal with cancer or mental illness or something that I've dealt with, but it doesn't matter. Yes,
Yeah.
there's specifics, but I don't like the idea of when we're talking about those specifics, we're talking really about our loved ones, where this is really about us.
Yeah, we have a lot of commonalities of what's in our experience, no matter who we're caring for. Totally agree.
30 minutes just flies by, Elizabeth. So please share with all the listeners where they can learn more about you.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, it does fly by. It's happyhealthycaregiver.com. You can kind of reach it all there. So thank you so much for just having this time to celebrate caregivers this month.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being my first guest on National Family Caregiver Month. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you do for all of us.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. And come back next week for more about caregiving. Thanks for spending part of your day with me here on Maybe I Can, exploring possibilities one sprinkle at a time. It's been great having you, and I hope you're leaving with a spark to light up your journey to more. Remember, every big change starts with a single maybe. If you're ready to kickstart that change but not sure where to begin, I've got just the thing for you. Head over to download my free guide, The One Critical Step to Kickstart Change, and take that all-important first step. Let's make those maybes into reality one sprinkle at a time. Catch you next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific with more stories, tips, and that extra push you might need. I'm Debbie saying goodbye for now, but always remember, maybe, just maybe, you can.